But let's bring Richard Tice into the conversation now. Lovely to see you.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming. You want to launch an assault on the budget, but we don't know what's in it. So what are your thoughts about Wednesday?
Because this budget has been so delayed and there's been so much briefings, we know that actually Labour is going to essentially, it's an assault on hard work, an assault on jobs, with freezing the thresholds, with...
they're not being confirmed, so what are you suspecting? Freezing of thresholds?
I'm expecting freezing of personal thresholds, which affects all workers, national insurance for employers, an assault on pension
Are
schemes.
employers working people, Richard Tice?
Yes, I mean, a small business owner who's taking risk, who's employing people, he's also a worker. He's working his or her socks off. And it's going to be an assault on small businesses. The Federation of Small Businesses is terrified. The truth is, everybody is genuinely terrified about this budget. And you know, the reality, what we have to change the culture. You can't tax your way out of the crisis we're in. You've got to grow your way out of the crisis. We've got to celebrate working hard, making more money, taking more risk, being an entrepreneur, growing the economy.
I know,
that's what we've got to do.
Labour will say, it's all very well Reform saying this, you're not in power, you haven't got 22 billion black holes to fill. You're just campaigning, you're not governing.
They made a political choice to pay more to public sector workers. That's what's created what they call a black hole. Look, the truth is that we're going to end up with, we're all going to be taxed more in order to have a bigger state, a bigger public sector, which will be more bloated, more inefficient, outcomes are worse. We're heading towards financial and cultural disaster.
Isn't that overstating it?
No, it's
cultural
not.
Disaster.
It is. Look, you have to change the culture of working hard, being successful, making more money is a good thing.
What do you think? Britons are lazy and that Labour is perpetuating this idea?
We've ended up with a culture for too many people where if you make money, if you're successful, if you're running a business, then you're not one of the good guys. That somehow you're just sort of... you're just in it for yourself. Actually, it's successful people who create wealth, who generate and create jobs. That's what drives growth. That's what drove growth in the 80s and 90s of 2.5% to 3.5% a year. We're miles away from that. When we had a smaller state, a state that actually worked and was efficient. We've got the worst of all worlds at the moment.
Are Reform now more inclined to go after Labour voters than Conservative voters? I say that because I think Nigel has made that point. It's kind of quite J.D. Vancian to sort of have this proposition where you are right-wing in a lot of your socially conservative social policies and culture policies. You want to talk tough on immigration, but you might, in the vein of J.D. Vance, be speaking more to the working man and women, say, for instance, when you're talking about factory closures, productivity, all of these green ideas that are going to cost jobs in the North Sea.
Absolutely. The truth is, we are the party of common sense, the party of the working class. Our main economic policy, for example, is to pay no income tax until you're earning £20,000 a year, which would free up £1,500. That would cost about 40 billion.
40 billion?
And you pay for that. First of all, we shouldn't be paying voluntary interest on all the QE money. Economists now agree with me on that.
Although you calculated that figure when interest rates were 5.5%.
No, they were 5.25% and they're now 5%. And our numbers were based on less than 5%.
What were they based on? How much less than 5%?
Based on 4.75%.
OK, but what if interest rates by the time of the next Parliament go down to 1 or 2%?
Then we get more growth. But the point is, we shouldn't be wasting that. It's costing us billions of it. If you scrap net zero, you save tens of billions every single year.
We'll get onto two-tier policing in just a minute, but just a quick question. You've made this point that you want to win over Tory councillors to reform. Since the last general election, the Tories have won 15 council seats in by-elections and other elections. Reform have won just 1. So why on earth would you defect to Reform when the Conservatives, weirdly, have been doing better than Reform since July the 4th?
I don't think we've stood in all of those elections, but even since Nigel wrote to 1,300-odd councillors, we've had, I think, half a dozen plus have defected, lots more discussions going on. I think the truth is that they realise that many people who are what I would call real Conservatives, who believe in our principles and values, realise that, frankly, the Tory party has let them down.
Well, Kelly Badenoch's coming in a minute. Is she a real Conservative?
People can work that out for themselves.
Is she or not?
I don't think she is. I think she's... genuinely, I think that she's, for example, she's pro-mass immigration. She hasn't talked about leaving an overseas court that we don't need to be a member of.
Oh, so you want to pin her down on that? Oh, so you think that Robert Jenrick is a real Conservative then? Because he wants to leave the ECHR?
Well, I think you've got to grow the economy. We've got to leave
Do
the
you
ECHR.
think he's a real Conservative?
I think he's more real than Kemi. Yes.
We'll put this to her then. You've got to cross paths, by the way, when you leave the studio, so good luck with that. Tommy Robinson...
See, I answer your questions.
I know you do, and I appreciate that, and so do the audience. Tommy Robinson, people have been protesting in his name. What do you make of Tommy Robinson? Is he a good guy in your eyes?
No. All of that lot, we have nothing to do with them.
Even the protesters who have got banners up saying two-tier Keir... You agree with them on the policing and justice?
We agree with ourselves. I'm not aligning ourselves with Tommy Robinson's lot in any shape or form.
But tell me before we go, you've had a lot of messages, you told me before we came on air, from police officers in light of the Chris Cabba case and Martin Blake being exonerated of murder. What are they saying to you? Because
you did indeed. And there's a crisis of confidence in serving police officers and firearms officers about whether or not they're going to be properly protected and looked after by the Independent Office for Police Conduct and by the CPS.
Do you think the CPS has let down?
I think both of them. I think I challenged the Home Secretary in the Commons last week because I think that accountability includes accountability of the leadership of both those organisations. And if you've got a collapse of confidence, if you've got firearms officers laying down their weapons saying we're not going to do it, then actually I think we need new leadership in those two organisations.
Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, was wrong, wasn't he, when Chris Cabba was killed, to just express sympathy for Chris Cabba's family and not Martin Blake's?
I think Sadiq Khan's wrong on many things, including that he was wrong at the time. And I think we should have been told about Chris Cabba's past.
But the jury wasn't, because Martin Blake didn't know he was a gangster when he shot him.
Well, what he knew was that vehicle had been involved in a firearms incident the night before. That's what we knew.
Richard Tice, thank you very much indeed for joining me in the studio this morning.